Sometimes when you're making a YouTube video about what's going on in pop culture, you really have to put a lot of time and effort and research and find good images. And then there's this morning when I woke up and went to Cosmic Book News. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to shut up and read you what the critics said about The Witcher Blood Origin. So, The Witcher Blood Origin, this comes out on Christmas Day. Ho, 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 mistletoe, all those types of things. Now, this is going to shock you, but Netflix and The Witcher Blood Origin is absolutely getting destroyed by the critics out there. And a lot of these same sites are the ones that are all the way up, all these studios, you know what, with the woke casting and the ESG score stuff and the climate change stuff. But for whatever reason, they're absolutely eviscerating Witcher Blood Origin. Now, this is going to be a 4-episode prequel miniseries. Henry Cavill, a lot of drama this week talking about Henry. Not going to get into that, but suffice it to say, Henry Cavill will be leaving the series due to creative differences, meaning they're not even trying to capture the lore and what the Witcher character is in the Witcher's own series. And much can absolutely be said about this Blood Origin prequel. This is set 1,200 years before the time of our man from Rivia, Geralt. This has to do with the creation of the first prototype Witcher, and of course the events that led to the conjunction of the spheres, which is an incredibly important story within the Witcher universe, and especially with what it has to do with the elves. Fans, because we're toxic, we're all racist, we're misogynist, we're afraid of strong women, we're rejecting The Witcher. That's obviously the only reason out there. Has nothing to do with the show's creative actually rejecting what made the Witcher story fantastic in the first place in the lore, which is exactly why Mr. Cavill said adios to the show. The writer of the Witcher series says that their own writing staff not just don't like what Sapkowski wrote, but they mock it. Why? Because the current crop of writers that's out there and in vogue in Hollywood, and probably will not be changing anytime soon, have only one creative tool, and that is a hammer. They are the Antifa, the disruptors, the breakers of the patriarchy, of capitalism, of blah, 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 blah. Now, Blood Origin does not come out until Christmas Day. It is literally the lump of fantasy coal in your pop culture stocking. Let's take a look at what Rotten Tomatoes has to say about the Blood Witcher. The first one comes from the most conservative of newspapers out there. I'm kidding. The San Francisco Chronicle, and it says, despite its narrative swiftness and impactful action, thanks to Michelle Yeoh for lending her influence as well as her presence, Blood Origin is just a time waster. Yeah, this is San Francisco. Poop City. Liberal AF. AV Club says, without the anchor that keeps the franchise grounded, it really is just a fantasy story without any of the things that make The Witcher special. Empire Magazine, you remember them? They were the epicenter of shilling for the Rings of Power. They say, with largely flat performances, tacky looking visual effects, even tackier looking sets, and a risible script, quote, let's stop this bickering and change the future of Elfkind forever, unquote. It's more like Battle Beyond the Stars. Oh my God, that was a terrible movie from the 70s with John Boy in it. Meets Hawk the Slayer. TV Guide says, there's very little here that must be seen if you're a fan of The Witcher. And there's nothing that would hook someone who hasn't checked out the show already. My God, you can say that about Wheel of Time. You can say that about The Rings of Power. You can say that about all of the fantasy that's come out this year, with the exception of House of the Dragon, in my opinion. The London Evening Standard says, it's hard to feel invested in the fate of the characters, who ultimately are little more than a footnote in Sapkowski's books. How much Witcher is too much? Here's your answer. Meaning Blood Origin. Paste Magazine says Blood Origin does not stand very well on its own or as part of the expanding Witcher franchise, managing to focus on some of the least interesting aspects of one of The Witcher's most fascinating pieces of lore. The Verge, again, another liberal, love everything rag, says Blood Origin too far removed from the stuff that actually makes the franchise interesting and too crowded with any one character to carry it. But what about my diversity and inclusion? Boy, The Verge sounds racist. It's crazy. I wonder what names they're going to call The Verge. In a year filled with great fantasy, House of the Dragon and the Rings of Power among them, well, that was a bridge too far with the Rings of Power. This ultimately ranks near the bottom. This is from Total Film. Imagine that. Something worse and less canonical than Amazon's The Rings of Power. Slant Magazine says the series proves too hurried and too scattered to penetrate ladies, much beyond the surface of its universe and characters. Dexter Rose says it's a passable, quasi-brutal blur of magic and blood you'll forget the moment it's done. Just play Witcher 3 instead. I could not agree more. Finally, Collider. Collider, everybody's favorite shill of shills, says ultimately your enjoyment of Blood Origin will depend on how invested you are in the Witcher universe and how convinced you are by the slapdash storylines it presents. Ouch. When you've lost Collider, you really have screwed the pooch. So there it is. That's what professional, and you can't see my air quotes reviews are saying about the Witcher 4-part miniseries that comes out on Netflix on Christmas Day. I am going to have nothing to do with this for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is this is not going to get in and infect my headcanon like an ill-advised mRNA shot. I hope you all are having a great week. I, of course, am Salty Travel UC. Have a really good Christmas if I don't see you before then. I'll talk to you later.